Hello everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn and I run the activities around MedComsNetworking.com, which are basically various services designed to encourage people in and around MedComs across the globe to talk to each other, share information, champion best practice, and so on. One of the things we've done over the last few years, I think very successfully, is we've developed various services for people who are interested in joining MedComs, either as a writer, an account manager, or whatever. So we have a service now under the FirstMedCommsJob.com banner, where you'll find articles, videos, audio booms, and so on. We run various meetings, but not everyone can get to the meetings. So with these Zoom webinars, this is another opportunity for us to reach out to more people. You can join in from wherever in the world you are and find out a little bit more about what the world of MedComs is about. And I'm trying to invite some of the agencies to come along and talk about themselves and what it's like working in their organizations. So today, very, very happy to have the guys from inScience, and we're going to talk specifically about the client services, account management side of the business. So without further ado, I'm going to say welcome guys, and I'm going to hand over to Neil, who is going to kick us off with a presentation, and then we'll come back to some Q&A. So over to you, Neil.
Thank you, Peter. Everybody can hear me. I'm just going to share some slides up on screen now as well, so hopefully you can see those. So yeah, thanks again, and thanks to everybody who's joined today. My name is Neil Godlieb. I'm a Group Account Director at inScience Communications. As Peter says, I'll be providing you with a brief introduction to inScience Communications, along with some information about the larger organization we are a part of. After that,
Neil, sorry, very briefly, can you just put yourself on
slideshow mode? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, hopefully that's sorted that out. Yeah, so also I'll do a brief introduction to the larger organization that we are a part of. And then after that, we'll go over to each of the panelists to introduce themselves to you and tell you a bit about how they ended up working in medical communications. And then we'll follow that with discussing some of the qualities that are required of a client services team member at inScience Communications. So just to explain a little bit about inScience, if we start with Springer Nature, which is the larger organization that we belong to, it's one of the biggest publishers in the world. It was created a few years ago when two big publishers at that, even then, Springer and Macmillan, merged. Springer Healthcare is a division within Springer Nature, and inScience Communications is a brand of Springer Healthcare. inScience Communications are the global MedComms division of Springer Healthcare. As a company, Springer Nature numbers around 13,000 plus staff across 50 odd countries, and as of 2017, our turnover was approximately 1.7 billion. I think the point that we want to make about this is that as an employee, it gives you a certain level of security and stability belonging to, being employed by and belonging to a large organization such as Springer Nature. inScience Communications are the global MedComms agency, as I mentioned. We have a number of offices. We have 2 offices in the US, 3 offices in the UK, with the most recent one being in Knutsford. We've also got offices in New Zealand, which have quite a long time, and most recently we have an office in Tokyo as well. As a MedComms agency, it's one of the longest established agencies, having been around for 35 plus years actually, and we employ 100 plus full-time, highly qualified medical writers and client service staff globally. And many of our employees are actually CMPP, which stands for Certified Medical Publication Professional Certified. We employ staff from varied backgrounds with different types and levels of qualifications. Essentially, we focus on employing people who are the right fit for the job. As mentioned by Peter, we're here to talk to you today about working in the client services team at inScience Communications, providing account management and project management support alongside our editorial colleagues. More specifically, we'd also want to discuss what we look for in individuals who work within client services, what training is provided to them, so the career pathway that exists to employees. But before this anyway, I'd like to the panelists to actually introduce themselves. So I'd like to hand over to Mike. Mike, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Of course. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. I'm Mike Nixon. I'm a Group Account Director here at inScience Communications. So I'm Neil's opposite number. And we work together to manage our sort of growing group of accounts within the company from a client services perspective. So we're sort of the second level down from the client services director. So I've been in medical communications for a frightening amount of time. I have spent most of that time within inScience. It's been a few different company names. It's been owned by different people at the time, but obviously it's stabilized, as Neil was talking about earlier on. I actually got into the industry via a very strange route. I got a degree in industrial design, which some people might recognize. It's also called product design. Wasn't sure about what I was going to do, but through that early jobs after my degree, I got into a role that was related to the event industry. And it was through that I found out about medical communications, because obviously it's a big part of the work that gets done within medical communication. And I got my first job in an agency in Macclesfield, as many people do. And then I was picked up by inScience, as I say, quite a few years ago. And I've been here ever since, developing skills, building up knowledge and experience of the industry. And it's been a very positive experience. So I'm not sure what else to tell you about at the moment, but that's my sort of potted history, is how I got into medical communications. Who's next?
Thank you, Mike. So actually, I was going to introduce myself as well after Mike did. So yeah, I'm Neil, Group Account Director. As Mike says, I'm Mike's counterpart. I've been in medical communications for 17 years, having started as a project manager in 2002. Like I first started my medical communications career in a Macclesfield-based agency, and then moved to a couple of other agencies, and I've been at inScience now for 6 years. I have a science degree, a natural sciences degree, but prior to that, my background was in design, advertising, and marketing. I am CMPP certified as well. I'm probably highly experienced in publications type projects, and I'm also heavily involved in using industry standard publication management software as well, just to give you a little bit of my background. Okay, and with that, I'd like to hand over to Jordan.
Hi everyone, I'm Jordan. I'm an account executive here at inScience. I've been here since April 2016, so just over 3 years. And this is my first role in the MedComms industry. I started as account coordinator, but now I'm an account executive. As you can see, I've got a degree in sports technology, which is more down the engineering route rather than the scientific route. And I had a couple of jobs after university before coming into MedComms. A lot of those, some of the skills I learned in those roles has definitely helped with what I do now. So there's a lot of project management things, working with compliance-based systems, because I was in the financial sector, so there's a lot of compliance there. So it's definitely some transferable skills from that type of role. So yeah, a science degree is definitely advantageous for this type of role, but as you can see, I've not got a science degree, but I've managed to do okay here, and I'm slowly progressing and learning every day. I've got quite a bit of experience now in working, doing meeting planning, delivery of projects from the start to the finish, from budgets all the way through financial management. So yeah, that's a bit of background about me. I'll pass over to Kate.
Okay.
Hello everyone, so I'm Kate. I've actually only been in MedComms for 3 years, and I joined inScience straight out of university. As you can see from the slide, I have a biology degree from the University of Aberdeen. When I was leaving university, I was considering entering like a lab role, and I did have a few offers. But I was actually searching one day on, the usual career websites for any sort of job that maybe my degree would be helpful with, and I came across inScience Communications. I'd never really actually heard of MedComms before I saw the job advert, but obviously I think the skills that you learn at university, particularly also with a science degree, such as time management when you're doing a lab-based project. I think you have to be fairly organised if you've managed to get a university degree, and I think very aware of time management. So I managed to get the job, which I was really happy with. And I've been here, as I say, for 3 years now, which I think is a relatively short amount of time in MedComms, but I've really enjoyed it so far. Dissimilarly to Jordan, I actually work on a publications account, so I've experience in managing projects such as abstracts and manuscripts, review articles and gap analyses to completion. And I also am heavily involved in the financial aspect and client satisfaction as well to do with the role. I think obviously why I say a biology degree is helpful, because obviously it helps you to understand what your team members on the editorial team are involved in. I don't think it's necessarily a must. I think as long as you're a confident person, you like to talk to people, you're good at communications, you've got good time management. I think you're proactive. I think you would be really good for a role in MedComms. So yeah, that's a bit of my background. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks, Mike and Jordan as well. That's great. I mean, in fact, Kate and Jordan both actually sort of echoed what is actually on this slide, which is what I wanted to present to you, which is the types of qualities that we look for in individuals who work in client services. Of course, full training would be provided to a potential employee, to a candidate on, in terms of internal processes and using industry-specific project management or financial systems. But what is just as important for a member who works in the client service team is an individual's transferable skills or professional skills, such as Kate said, ability to communicate effectively. As Jordan says, ability to work under pressure, attention to detail, to name a few qualities. The career pathway at inScience Communications is an account exec. You progress to an account coordinator. Then you can progress to account exec, account manager, senior account manager, account director, group account directors like Mike and I are, and client services directors who Mike and I report to. So there's a reasonable level of depth and a long career pathway, as opposed to being sort of only 2 or 3 roles. We've recently also created another role within client services called the project coordinator. This is essentially a non-client facing role. It has its own career pathway as well. And these roles are admin-oriented roles that require the use of databases and financial systems. But I'd like to stress that this does not mean that the career prospects for somebody who joins us as a project coordinator is limited in any way. In fact, employees can change roles and be more client facing if they wish, if they have an aptitude for it and want to do it. And on that particular point, one thing I did fail to mention about working in this larger organization in science communications, being the MedComms division of Springer Healthcare, being a part of Springer Nature. One of the great things about working in a large organization like this is, as an employee, the amount of opportunities it presents to you. For instance, it's not unheard of for people to actually come and join the MedComms division who previously worked in publications, or it's not unheard of for people to actually move geographical location from Europe to the US, for instance, and yet remaining an employee. So those are some of the perks actually that come with working for a large organization. Yeah, so I think that pretty much covers the basis for today's discussions from a presentation point of view. So Peter, I think we will probably go to maybe any questions that today's attendees have.
That'd be fantastic. Okay, if you can unshare your slides, and we'll go back to the videos. Yeah. Just talking to the audience for a moment, and again, to repeat what I said earlier, at the bottom of your screens, you should have a chat button and a Q&A button, so you can call those up and text in your questions and your observations. Please do send any questions that you have. Can I start just to kick things off a little bit here, guys? Thank you very much for your presentations there. To cover off a couple of obvious points. I don't think any of you were PhD, postgraduate or whatever. A lot of these meetings talk about medical writing side of things, where they're much more interested in those postgraduate qualifications. You guys have got quite a variety of backgrounds. Just touch on this or refresh us a little bit, just as a generalization. In terms of background, you seem to be saying science is useful but not mandatory, because at least one of you didn't have that, two of you I think. The postgraduate obviously isn't a big issue for you guys. Is that right? Is there anything else you can add to that in terms of the sorts of people you're looking to bring in?
I can chip in here, Peter. I mean, the bottom line is you're absolutely right. It is a much more, I would say, of an open field in the client services department, as opposed to in the editorial department, where there's more focus on formal qualifications. So, I mean, that's why we brought this team of people together for the meeting today, because there is a diverse range of background. And I think, as Neil alluded to before, it's more about the qualities of the individual and how they present themselves, how they perhaps the jobs that they've done in the past, and transferable skills, as Kate mentioned. So I would say it's a much more open playing field, and that's a great thing about the client services side. We are very big on culture in science communications. It's a massive part of keeping a productive team together. So we definitely look at each candidate as an individual rather than their very specific sort of background, and we'll judge them on that and how they present themselves at interview and the way they come across, just as much as their technical abilities and qualifications. I mean, I know plenty of people in very senior positions in medical communications in the client services department who haven't got a degree, for example, at all. So it's not a limiting factor. It's a helpful factor to know a little about the scientific industry. But with the qualities that we're looking for in a client services person, you can very quickly learn enough about scientific industry to enable you to function effectively. So yeah, that's a comment on that.
Okay.
Could I?
Go on, Neil. Go on.
Sorry, Peter. I also just wanted to say, the other side of it is that we actually have on our team, two doctors actually who have medical degrees, who actually work in client services, who joined the team, as juniors basically, and who are working their way up the career pathway. So I just wanted to make a point that for anybody who, has a medical degree, for instance, or, a nursing degree, or, but doesn't necessarily want to stick with that, found that they want a career change. I just wanted to stress that they shouldn't feel like they are overqualified either, because, as Mike says, it's less about the qualification, more about the individual. And as two examples of these two individuals who were junior doctors, worked in the NHS for a number of years, but decided that wasn't for them. They could have, in theory, felt that they were overqualified for this, and that they wouldn't get the job because they were overqualified. But actually, they've joined us, and they're progressing very well and very quickly, and it does help, but it's not mandatory.
Okay, and to just add to that, you haven't mentioned it, I don't think, but how interesting is it to you if they specifically have pharma industry type experience? I don't think any of you did, but is that a particular plus, or again, does that just sort of merge in with the other qualities of the individual? How interested are you in the industry experience?
I would say, Mike, please chip in if you disagree, but I would probably say that it is those qualities, it is those transferable professional skills really that we require to work in client services. And I think, Kate came straight out of university. Without any previous work experience as such. We've all come from very different backgrounds and different agency backgrounds. Some individuals have come out of university, worked in hospitality for many years, and then decided to move into MedComms. But they just have the right aptitude, the right attitude, proactivity, and skills required. And so it might be a plus factor to have prior pharma experience, Peter, but I think it really does come down to the person.
Okay. Can we, and one of the questions coming from Lucy about the difference between medical writing and client services. So we need to be a little bit careful with this, because the terminology can get a little bit muddled, and different agencies can talk about it and organize themselves a little bit differently. But, I guess one can essentially say the medical writers clearly are concentrating on the content generation. It's not necessarily literally writing, but it's the content side of things. Whereas the client services account management side is more the project management, the budgeting, the client liaison, and so on. Is that a fair point? Can you tell us a little bit more how you distinguish yourselves from your medical writing colleagues, and how you coordinate between the two of you?
I think in general terms, that's probably right. If you think of the triangle of quality, timelines, and budget, I would say probably the editorial team members probably concentrate more on the quality of the content, whereas the client service personnel probably concentrate more on timelines and budget. But that's a very, very simplistic approach to it. A lot of our client service personnel actually do, because they do have a scientific background. Some of them don't, but even those who don't have a scientific background can sometimes, learn on the job and get used to actually looking at editorial deliverables, and they can, say something meets the brief or doesn't. But in terms of that, the actual writing, I think that is probably where client services probably wouldn't go. That's probably where we limit ourselves. Actual writing.
Just out of interest, and again, pursuing that a little bit further, on the account management side, client services side, how much of it would you say is a sales role as opposed to a project management role? And does that vary depending on the level you're at?
Yes, I would say that does vary. We business development director, so obviously that's his specific role, to look for new business, new work. I would say there is an element within client services of organic business development. So by building the trust and the relationship with the client, you expand the work that we're doing with that client, and expand the therapy area even. So that's definitely part of the client services role, but I would say that becomes more apparent and more relevant as you progress up the ladder, as it were. Early on, it's more about getting the skills of project delivery and project management, financial skills, and then later you can start to focus on, building the relationships and therefore building the business. So there is a sales element, but it's not, I would never think of it as a cold sales element. It's more of a organic business growth element.
Okay, that makes sense. Jordan and Katie, can I bring you in as a sort of slightly younger, newer members of the team, as it were? But what are you doing on a sort of day-to-day basis in terms of your account management skills? I mean, Jordan, can I start with you and then Katie as well? But can you talk a bit more about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis or what you found so far?
Yeah, sure. So generally, I tend to, most recently I've been working on meetings. So it varies from organising symposias to advisory boards to one-off meetings for pharma clients. And essentially I can be managing the whole delivery of that. So we tend to work with the faculty side, so the actual presenters at these meetings. So we manage working with them to develop their content. I can then work with our internal team to get that content delivered, right through to booking their flights, booking the hotels, booking the venues for all these meetings. So my day-to-day role is managing that, managing timelines, making sure the deliverables on time to budget. So yeah, there's a lot of different elements involved.
Okay. So lots of meetings?
Yes, there's lots of meetings. Last year specifically, I went, I think I was in Paris 4 times, Barcelona and Montreal. So I think I was away about 6 times last year, each for a couple of days at a time. And obviously when working on site, there's a lot of elements a lot of moving parts. So yeah, it's very busy. It's very fast paced. But it's good. It's different. Every meeting is different. It's very it's enjoyable, the fact that you can see you're essentially working up to a meeting and then you can see the actual deliverable. There's something there. There's a lot of people involved and watching, and you can say, I did that. I helped deliver that project for the client.
Okay, so lots of admin-y sort of internal type meetings, but also in your role, to the travel to the standalone meetings and presumably to client offices and so on. Yeah. Katie, if I'm understanding it, you're more on a pubs account, is that right? Publications account, is that right?
That's right. So my day-to-day, the roles that I would be involved in, for instance, so whereas Jordan works on a meetings account, I would be making sure that things like upcoming the pharmaceutical company that is our client, if they have abstracts that they want to submit to that Congress, we make sure that they are delivered in time, that the content is reviewed and approved. So for that, we would be liaising with the client themselves, their internal functions and their team, but we would also be liaising with the independent investigators, so doctors, scientists, etc., directly. We're also, I would be checking in with the editorial team to make sure they think they're going to be able to deliver it on time, making sure that they have everything they need from the client to be able to deliver the work properly. If there's anything else they need, if they can see any issue might be cropping up in the future that we can alert our client to. And it's essentially making sure from start to finish that product is delivered in a timely way and also meets the client's expectations to what they want. So that's a similar thing for abstracts, for the corresponding posters, but also we also have 5 or 6 manuscripts that are ongoing that you would be doing a similar thing, making sure they're reviewed and approved, and the client, but also the independent investigators are all aligned and that they've all reviewed and approved.
Okay, cool. So again, one of the messages coming through here very much, which is worth stressing, is that you're all working very much as part of a team. There's quite a lot of liaison with other people, both internally, client type, author type, and so on. So it's something people have to be aware of. They're not coming into an office and sitting there and at their computer and just doing the budgeting sort of thing. There's a lot of liaison meetings and so on.
No, definitely not. It is definitely a team environment. I think it is important to stress that you're never on your own. You're never delivering a project on your own. There's always someone that you can help. There's always someone that you can ask for input. You'll be doing one part of a project and your team member will be helping you with another part of that project. It's not just you, at your desk on your own in a vacuum kind of thing.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to talk to the audience for a moment, and just I'm going to ignore the questions about writers that are coming in, because we do want to concentrate on the client service at the moment. However, at the end of the recording, we'll carry on talking. We can cover off some of these other questions, okay? But if we can concentrate on the client services side. So just at a general level, again, maybe either Mike or Neil, we're very much hearing events and the sorts of events you do. We're very much hearing publications. Do you want to go beyond that? What sort of services, projects and activities you get involved in? Is it very much pubs, events and a few other bits and pieces, or how do you balance the work out across different types?
I mean, one other thing I wanted to say, Peter, was, you'll know that, versus years gone by where pharmaceutical companies, sort of internal staff members within pharmaceutical companies have reduced. But what has happened as a consequence of that is that some of those publication manager type activities and tasks, I think the pharmaceutical companies and clients actually rely on agency personnel, particularly client service personnel, to actually deliver those types of tasks. So, just sort of saying meeting and publications might sometimes be, come across a little simplistic, but actually we are almost like an extension to a global publications department of a pharmaceutical company. We liaise directly with the reviewers and stakeholders, with global medical affairs, with all the publications personnel. So, we don't necessarily just with one person at a pharmaceutical company. We deal with multiple people within those organizations. So it just, just to give you a flavor of how I think the job within client services has changed, certainly since I started in 2002 versus what it is now. Mike, do you have a comment on that at all?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it has changed a lot. I think that you're talking about one side of the work around the publications and the need for industry for more support, because they're stretched internally, as it were, and I think that's definitely very true. The other thing I'm thinking about is the increased demand for more engaging ways of presenting content, of interacting with the audiences that pharma companies are trying to work with. So we're talking about patients and healthcare professionals. So more and more we're being asked to be innovative with the ways that we communicate. It's not suitable anymore to just do the standard industry deliverables. So we work more now in a technological environment. So we need to consider how we communicate, what channels we use. Is it a website? Is it an app? Is it a live webcast like this? Is it an augmented reality piece or something like that? But this is something that we're conscious of, and so as well as things like the standard meeting events and the publications work that we do, there is a lot of other, I suppose you might call them ad hoc projects that are very interesting. So like I say, there's webcasts, websites, different ways of presenting slide content, and the virtual meetings, things like that. So there's this whole other area of the industry, and I would say that what we try and do is allow everyone who works with us to experience all these different parts of the industry, not just the one area. Especially in the client services side, I think it's very important for everyone to get a flavour of those different types of accounts that we work on. So yeah, it's all that varied, I would say, than when I first joined the industry.
Okay. And that's one of the messages that comes across from most people in MedComms, is the variety of work that's involved. So project types, therapy areas, clients and so on, it's quite a variety of work there. Keris, just to pick up a couple of quick questions. Keris has asked specifically, who are your clients more specifically? Is it as simple as big pharma, or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we wouldn't reveal who our clients were directly, but I think if you can think of a large global pharmaceutical company, we probably were, and I'm sure the other do as well. So it's all the big names that you would think of in the pharma industry.
Are you doing much work in, say?
We work with them on a global level, so I think it's important to understand that distinction. We're working with the global leaders of these pharmaceutical companies. We're not working as much with the local teams, the UK or the Spanish team. I mean, we do, but we have different areas of business who manage to work with them. So these are the senior leaders of these large pharmaceutical companies who we are working with directly.
Okay. And do you work much with, say, medical devices, for instance?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay. Can I just come back to, that was easy, yeah, just come back to the beginning. If we're talking about people, you've talked a bit about the sort of people you want to bring into the business, but just a little bit briefly, what's the process? If they contact you, I guess they see an ad or they contact you via the website, what's the sort of process? How are you going to interview them, test them? Are they going to have to go through a process there to get into the job? Can someone just sort of outline that for us?
Yeah, there's an assault course that they have to run. No, I mean, with the standard process you might expect with any industry, really. We have probably a first and second interview. There might be a short test, a sort of aptitude. But really, it's about getting a really good feel for the person and getting a good conversation going. We might speak to someone first on the phone and have a chat, and see if that takes us onto a face-to-face meeting. And as you said, Peter, there's plenty of different ways to get in touch with us. I mean, there's so many ways, but I mean, you start with the website, and obviously there's a number of different ways to get in touch with us via there. And obviously we have live adverts out in the industry press and on the industry websites.
Okay, and what's, I mean, with the medical writing, everyone will be talking about medical writing tests that they have to go through. Are there tests on the account management client services side? Do they come in and have to do presentations? What, practically speaking, what do they have to expect to go through?
I think at a senior level, we might talk about doing a short presentation. Yeah, a lot of the roles that we're recruiting for are often more junior, and I think that generally we would have a short, like I say, aptitude test on the second interview that they would need to complete. Yeah, unless it was up at a more senior level, that would be as far as we go with sort of formal testing.
Okay. Do you do things like internships, work experience type opportunities, things like that? Are those opportunities there for anybody?
I wouldn't say there's anything that we have on offer at the moment. We don't generally do that, but it's not something that we wouldn't necessarily consider if someone has a particular proposal. Again, it's worth getting in touch via the website if you've got an inquiry of that nature, but at the moment we don't have anything like that going on.
Okay, Neil, it looked like you're trying to say something there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I was talking about our sort of career pathway and how we created this role, a project coordinator, which was a non-client facing role, which was primarily oriented to deal with database management and financial systems. I have to say, I mean, we've employed a number of people internally as project coordinators, and they've always once they've come in and they joined us, and after a few months they've always wanted to progress, and they've progressed very fast. So I think as a company, there's two things really. Number one is we like to grow people from within. We like to mold people and train them and grow them in the right sort of culture that we foster at inScience Communications. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the main thing, really. We just want to grow people internally, and I think we've been quite successful at that. And we don't. This is also, a reason why we came up with that role is because there are lots of other competitors to us out there who don't consider people who don't already have experience. And I think this is somewhere where we've been very successful, because we don't always just look for people who have relevant MedComms experience. We look at people who are from entirely different backgrounds altogether. We focus on the person, and I think we've struck gold with that. Okay.
And just picking up on Keris's question there, once they get in, what's the environment like? She suggested fast-paced and high stress. Is that are those words that sort of spring to mind? Are there other words?
I think.
Do we not stress? I don't know.
I think maybe Kate and Jordan can actually answer that one. How did you guys find it?
I think, again, it's important to stress that it is a team environment. So you're not, when you start, it's not just you on your own dealing with tasks that might be very time sensitive. There's a team behind you. So there's a lot less pressure than you might think. I think in inScience in particular, it's a very welcoming environment. There's no question too small. I think you kind of start off with the lower, maybe lower level tasks, more admin tasks, getting up to date with systems that maybe your client uses or that we use ourselves internally. And then once you've mastered them, the basics. So that's really not a high pressure environment there. That's when you would start to take on maybe more client facing tasks or more time sensitive tasks. Once you've got the basics, you're not thrown in at the deep end and expected to swim. There's a lot of people around you that are willing to help, that have got a lot of experience themselves. So I'd stress that while it can be fast paced, but that means it's boring. There's always something to do, but I wouldn't say it's stressful because there's plenty of people around you to help and provide guidance.
Okay, cool. Jordan, I mean, you're very involved in the meetings. Does it all fit into a 9 to 5 day?
Well, it can vary. It generally is, but obviously with meetings, they tend to take place over weekends. So we obviously have to take that element into it. And I would just like to echo what Kate was saying. So like, environment is very much, you can learn at your own pace. You're not thrown at the deep end, because when I started, I didn't have any background in this. I didn't know much about MedComms, just like Kate. And I learned at my own pace. I slowly built myself up until I was comfortable. And the rest of the team have really, they foster that. It's very much a team base. There's always someone to ask. There's always someone to help you out. No one's ever left on their own and just, sat, like you said, just at a computer all day. It's all, there's lots of conversations. We're all sat close together. So it's a very open environment. But yeah, so going back to the meetings work, obviously that it comes in troughs. So there's meetings, the build-ups to meetings, it can get very busy, very fast-paced. There's obviously levels of stress, but it's not a high-stressed environment like someone's asked. But yeah, it's a good place to work. It's a nice environment to work in, and everyone's got your back.
Okay, all right. Well, look, I've got one eye on the clock because I'm quite keen that we wrap this up a little bit, the recording part of this up now. And that's a nice positive note to end on. I think you're all looking very happy with your jobs, so that's good. So could I do that? Can I draw this recording to a halt? But again, to the audience, just say that we're all happy to carry on talking. So, and there's some more questions there which we can cover off. So don't run away. But can I just, for the moment, say a big thank you to the speakers. And I'll stop the recording if you all just give us a little wave and say goodbye. All right. So bye bye.
Bye now.